Hello and welcome to Orthostatic, the podcast of the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. I'm James Spencer, and the word podcast is really a misnomer. We are on video on YouTube as well. If you'd like to support this podcast, please click subscribe, hit that like button wherever you listen to your podcasts, and over on YouTube as well. Every person who likes and subscribes does help us do our work, which helps us advocate for the physical therapy profession, which is what we're going to be talking about today with Justin Elliott, who is the Vice President of Government Affairs at APTA, where he has led the association's legislative, public policy, and political efforts on Capitol Hill since 2015. He has held several positions at APTA since joining the association in 2002, serving as APTA's Director of State Government Affairs and Associate Director of State Government Affairs. He received his bachelor's degree in communications and minor in political science from Virginia Tech. He is a member of the Public Affairs Council and American Society of Association Executives. Last year, he was recognized by the National Institute for Lobbying and Ethics as a 2023 top lobbyist. So we're really lucky to have him out there fighting for our profession. We're going to talk about some of the wins that APTA has had this year in the advocacy realm, some of the battles that are ongoing, and some things that the profession needs you to take action on in short order here in the next few days. And we'll show you how to do that as well. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Justin. Welcome, and thanks for taking the time to join us. The first question I really want to ask you is what is it that you do for APTA?
That's a great question. First of all, I've been here at APTA. It'll be 23 years come January, and been in a variety of different roles. I started off at APTA doing state government affairs, but currently I am a vice president of government affairs at APTA. So what that means is I oversee a couple of areas. First is our lobbying staff, our in-house lobbyists. We have 3 in-house lobbyists here at APTA, along with our contract lobbyists, and their focus is all of our advocacy efforts aimed on at Capitol Hill. So being up there every day at the Congress, talking about the bills, talking about payment, talking about admin burden. We also then have our state government affairs department, which are the staff that work with our state chapters to both advance the PT profession and defend the PT profession at the state level. We then have our grassroots area, which is really member engagement, getting folks to get involved in the political process, contact their members of Congress. And of course, PT PAC, which is led by Mike Matlack, our Political Action Committee, which helps raise funds so that we can support those members of Congress. So those are the area that I, as vice president, I cover. But a lot of my time is spent up on Capitol Hill, again, advocating on so many of the bills that we have right now, everything from Medicare payment reform to prior authorization reform to falls prevention, you name it.
Great. And we are going to get into some of the specific topics that are going on right now and what people and members need to be out there doing to advocate for the profession and keep moving things forward. But I'm going to back up to a really basic question. I mean, so it sounds like you're coordinating and navigating kind of the most important topics in PT and what needs to be pushed politically to improve practice and access to physical therapists. And there's several lobbyists over there at APTA. What is it really that you guys are doing there on the Hill? How tell me a little bit more about the mechanics of how that works.
I always look at lobbying as almost like a 3 or 4-legged stool, because you have your lobbyists who are there on the ground in the halls of Congress, meeting with staff, doing political events, meeting with members of Congress, really talking front and center directly about here's the issues that PT is facing. Payment, Medicare needs to pay more for our services, the admin burden, the paperwork, just walking them and talking directly with those members of Congress on a daily basis and their staff about the issues that are pressing to us, but also the various bills that we have in play right now. And APTA has a lot of bills in play right now, everything from telehealth to payment to, again, falls prevention. The second part of that is really, the work that PT PAC does, making sure that we're supporting members of Congress, that they understand that, you got to support PT if you want our support. But then also it's the grassroots. It's really the work that not only our staff does, but really the APTA members through our grassroots network. When you get that action alert saying, please just take a few seconds, takes literally less than 10 seconds to push a couple buttons and send an email to your senator or member of the U.S. House to say, please support this bill, or please don't support this bill, or please include this in a legislative package. And so combined all together, the lobbying, the grassroots, and then also the political involvement is really kind of what I consider to be the three-legged stool of advocacy and truly trying to move the ball forward up on Capitol Hill, which, as we all know, can be a little bit tough because Congress is not the fastest moving organization, as it was technically not designed to be. But obviously, it's gotten a lot more challenging in recent years as we've seen more and more dysfunction up on Capitol Hill, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, but like when I think, so I've been a PT for 18 years now, all of a sudden. I don't know how that happened, but I often hear people like talk about how slow the change is and how this should be accomplished or that should be accomplished. But now that I look back over 18 years, I mean, there's a lot that was not commonplace in PT practice
Yes.
back then that is now. And I can even think of changes in my own state this year. We here in Colorado, we've been practicing ordering imaging for several years, but we put it into our Practice Act this year. It's in the law explicitly that we can do that, that we can review and provide education within our scope of practice on medications. I mean, we've had full direct access here for a long time, but like, there's all this stuff where when I look at the Colorado Practice Act today, I mean, I think it would have been a pipe dream 18 years ago for any state to have a Practice Act like that. So, I mean, I just say that to say, like, these things are changing.
You all got also in your Practice Act revision this year, the ability to prescribe durable medical equipment, which was huge.
Yeah.
So Colorado, kudos to the Colorado chapter, but also kudos to all the state chapters, because really where the action is, where things move fast, is at the state level, in state legislatures. You can actually get a lot done on a faster timeline than at the federal level. The federal government has always moved slow like molasses, but at the state level, and to your point, I started at APTA back in 2002, and back then there were 33 states that had some form of direct access. Today, all states have some form of direct access to evaluation and treatment. And what happened this year is we saw 3 states, Mississippi and Alabama, which had some of the more restrictive direct access laws. They removed most of their provisions. South Carolina also removed some of their provisions. And as of today, right now, Michigan has a bill that is passed the Senate, and hopefully we'll get a vote very soon that could provide unrestricted direct access to Michigan. So it's not only getting direct access in all 50 states and plus DC, but the number of states in the past couple of years, New Hampshire, Maine, Virginia, Tennessee, that have really begun removing those restrictions. And then you look at the issue of imaging, the ability of PTs to order imaging. We saw Arizona, they were able to do some x-rays. This year, they expanded their scope to be able to do all imaging. Dry needling was not even talked about in 2000. It was, but you didn't hear a whole lot about it. And the ability of PTs to do dry needling just was not something that was that commonplace, 22 years ago. We've been able to, our state chapters, been able to make sure that state practice acts were evolved and able to ensure that PTs can do dry needling, and even the recognition of DPT and making sure we have title protection for DPT and recognition. So yeah, there has been a lot of advancements in terms of scope of practice, in terms of patient access, and really trying to elevate and ensure that PTs are an entry point, at least when it comes to the licensure at the state level for that. At Congress, at the federal level, obviously we were able to get rid of the therapy cap. We were able to add PTAs as providers of TRICARE a few years ago. Of course, this year we'll talk a little bit later about some changes, 2 big wins we had this year as it relates to the Medicare fee schedule for PTAs and plan of care certification. But yeah, a lot has changed, and it's slow but steady.
I mean, you just rattled off a list that I mean, that should be like APTA's resume right there. Like, look what we've done. I mean, and none of this stuff happens on its own. None of this stuff happens easily. People are working hard to make it happen. What are some of the other state wins that happened this year?
Yeah, I mean, we had 3 states, Wyoming, Mississippi, and Vermont, address the issue of prior authorization through state legislation. Because, when it comes to commercial plans like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, et cetera, those are regulated primarily by states. Congress does not really have a whole lot of jurisdiction over commercial plans, but in most cases. And so we've seen states that have really begun, our chapters really be looking at introducing legislation to rein in or prevent the use of prior authorization or limit its use. And so we had 3 states this year in Vermont. Not only did they do legislation on prior auth, but they just got another win just through their advocacy with the state Medicaid program to eliminate prior authorization for PT under the state Medicaid plan. So prior auth is a huge issue. We had a bunch of wins last year. State of Maine had a huge prior auth win last year, and that's a really big topic right now. Admin burden, of course, and payment are the really the top 2 things that we're really looking at. We mentioned the imaging and prescribing, and imaging is a hot issue. We're going to see more states tackle that in 2025. New York chapter, the PTAs were prohibited from working on workers' comp patients. Crazy law from old, years ago. A New York chapter, PTAs will now be able to treat workers' comp patients when that law goes into effect. And elevating the ability or recognition of PTs as primary care providers who can determine disability. Utah and Wisconsin passed legislation this year that added PTs along with a list of physicians, et cetera, as being authorized to do that diagnosis and who can certify applications for disability placards at the DMV. So there's been a number of states that we also expanded the PT Compact. Alaska, Florida, Rhode Island also joined the PT Interstate Compact this year. We're getting very close to hopefully getting to that magical 50 in the next couple of years. So a lot of work being done at the state level, a lot of wins by our state chapters, really great work by our chapters. It really, again, pushing the needle, moving forward in terms of scope of practice, payment, and administrative burden.
Yeah, PT Compact. I was a travel PT for a long time. That's one that's close to my heart, and I mean it's amazing to see how fast that has moved, and what feels like a handful of years. It's probably been a little longer than
it will be. We started rolling that out in 2016. I want to say it's the first year we did legislation. So it's 8 years, and yeah, it's moved along. And I got and that's a great partnership with our friends at the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy, FSBPT, which really was the kind of the leader. They kind of been really saying we need to find a better way to address this interstate licensure issue because what we had back isn't working. So it's been great partnership with FSBPT on that issue.
Yeah, and to watch that map grow and grow has been a fun thing for me. There were 2 topics there that stuck out to me: PTs and disability placards, and prior auth. And it's not really the topic specifically that I want to ask about, but there's states that have had success in these areas. Yeah. They've had wins. How, if there's a PT out there that's sitting in their state thinking, man, this would be a really good thing to have in our state. We need that as well. What are the resources that exist? What should a person like that be doing to start to move the needle in their own state?
Yeah, because I was going to say, I can't think of a PT who's watching this right now who can say, yeah, I'm really happy with payment and the lack of paperwork I have to do. I think everyone is on the same page, and APTA also is of the same mind that we've got to change payment, we've got to move the needle on payment, and we've got to get rid of all this paperwork. And so at the state level, we do have a number of what we call model bills that we've created and provided to state chapters, that really are looking at. It's bills that we've seen in other states that have gone through things like prior authorization, things like getting rid of MPPR at the state level, whether it's a commercial payer or a state Medicaid that is adopted, what's known as the multiple procedure payment reduction, MPPR, which is essentially a payment cut, eliminating and getting rid of that payment cut. Fair PT copays, getting rid of these $60 copays. And these are all things that, impact us, but also impact the patients we serve. And so if you're watching and you're mad about this and frustrated, as everyone should be, one thing to do is to talk to your state chapter. Every state chapter has either a policy committee or a state legislative committee. And they also usually have a payment committee. Sometimes they're combined. But that's really who you want to approach and say, I've got an idea. I want to help out with prior auth. I want to help out with trying to get better rates under our state Medicaid. I want to do something about expanding the role of PTs under workers' comp. And working with your state legislature, who we work with, our APTA State Affairs. We have a team here that works directly with the state chapters, and we work. And right now, we're getting busy getting ready for the 2025 session, looking at all the bills that state chapters want to do on payment, on scope of practice, and pushing out those resources and getting prepared and ready for that. And so it's something where if that's something you want to do, we always need help. We always need folks who want, and we also need ideas too. Like, for folks to come and say, why don't we do this? And it's really a matter of working with the chapter and the chapter coordinating with us, and then getting those bills introduced, and then putting that advocacy behind it. And again, things move fast at the state level. You can have a bill introduced in January and it can be signed by the governor by March. And so, very unlike Congress, they actually can get things through the pipeline a lot faster. And again, at the state level, that's where a lot of the rubber meets the road when it comes to your licensure issues, your scope, and then at least with the commercial payment. Obviously, Medicare payments all done at the federal level.
Yeah. And I'll say, my experience in APTA has been whenever there's something that bugs me and I'm willing to put a little bit of elbow grease into it and work on it a little bit. Whenever I go to somebody, they say, yes, we know this is an issue. We just need somebody to work on it with us. And I love to drive home the point that this work doesn't get done on its own. It's done by members working with their state boards, working with APTA, working with the Federation of State Boards when needed. And it really just needs people to step up, bring the topics up to the top of the docket and start working on them. And so often I find when people bring these topics in, it's like, yes, let's work on this. Come do that with us. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and every chapter has a chapter lobbyist, so it's not like and those, again, we coordinate with those chapter lobbyists and the chapters, and so the state chapters, whether it's Colorado or Florida or Rhode Island, has somewhere there as a state capital to help work and advocate on those bills. And so, it's a great opportunity to get involved and meet your colleagues in your state and build those political relationships.
Yeah. Let's pivot. We've talked a lot about state stuff. Let's go out of the state realm, go into federal. I know that we've had a couple real big wins federally and quite recently.
Yeah, and so actually we started off 2024 in January when the Department of Defense released its report on implementation of direct access throughout all defense health agency clinics and facilities. Now, military has had technically has had direct access since the early 1970s, but the issue is that it was not necessarily implemented consistently or in all places or in all DHA, Defense Health Agency facilities. And so about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, APTA was successful in getting what's known as report language in the defense appropriations, basically saying to the DoD, we want you to look at how can you implement direct access, that be the standard care as PTA's primary care providers, entry points throughout the Defense Health Agency. And so this past January, we kicked off the year with the Department of Defense saying, we're going to make this system wide. Every facility, every clinic will be direct access model by the end of 2025. Now that's great because we're now going to have that uniformity throughout DoD and the DHA. But that's going to help us out with our efforts at the state level. That's helping us out at the federal level in terms of Medicare, really advancing the ball bit by bit on the issue of patient access. The other two wins happened more recently. Obviously, two of the big things that we have been yelling about for years at CMS about is why is it that Medicare Part B has direct supervision requirement of PTAs and OTAs when general supervision is the norm under all other Medicare settings and is the norm at the state level. 49 states allow for general supervision of both PTAs and OTAs. And so this was something that we introduced legislation called the Empower Act and worked with our friends at AOTA and a bunch of other groups to advance that legislation. And what we saw in July in the proposed 2025 Medicare fee schedule rule is CMS basically saying, okay, we see the writing on the wall. You're pushing this through Congress, and our congressional allies, Congresswoman Custer, Congresswoman Lesko from Arizona, pushing and pressuring CMS, saying, we've got this bill here that we're serious about. And so CMS, through regulation, was able to make that change from direct to general, and we saw that get finalized in November. And so now general supervision of PTAs and OTAs will now be the norm and standard for Medicare Part B, and that was huge. That was years in the making. That again, you trying to get CMS to change, getting congressional momentum, and so that helps PTAs. They'll be able to practice at the top of their license. It helps small practices, especially in rural and underserved areas where there are obviously more pressures on workforce and flexibility. So that was a nice win that we saw come to fruition in November. The other one is what's known as the Plan of Care certification, which one of those kind of regulations you look at going, what are they thinking here? And it's basically if you whether technically we have direct access under Medicare Part B. Patients can walk into a clinic without a referral, and PT can evaluate and commence treatment that day if they want to. The only proviso is that by the end of 30 days, they have to send the plan of care to the person's physician and get that plan of care signed by the physician by day 30, or they have to stop treatment. And so, looking at, obviously our goal is to get rid of this whole policy, but there was what was interesting is whether you had folks who came in without a referral via direct access. You had those patients who came in with a referral, and those were actually the ones we were having real problems with, because the PTs would go to the physician and say, you need to sign this plan of care. And the physician would say, I don't have to sign that plan of care. I sent them over with a referral. Why are you bugging me on this? You have a referral from me. And we're like, yes, but this is Medicare's requirement. You still got to sign us. And there are clinics that literally had what we called signature chasers. They would spend all day just trying to get those signatures by day 30, because by day 29, if you don't have that signature, you're going to have to stop treatment. So what this new policy is, and again, this is something that APTA introduced legislation. It was called the Reduce Act. And CMS, again, in July, saw the writing on the wall. They said, we're going to go ahead and make this change through regulation. And so what that means comes January is that for those patients who have a referral, you no longer have to chase that signature. Patient comes in with a referral, you submit the plan of care, you're done. You don't have to worry about that, anything more. Now, for those patients who come into you via direct access, you'll still need to get that signature by day 30. Now, eventually, our goal is to get rid of that, but this is almost like a 1-2 process. Let's get rid of this first, and then we'll come back and get, for those direct access patients, get rid of that policy that requires a signature. So it's a 2-step process. We got the first step done at least through that, and that's going to help. You look at just the amount of time and effort and energy that was wasted simply chasing down signatures. It was absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully that's going to be a nice relief for a number of our members and for a number of those practices out there.
That's huge. And I mean, there's a part here I want to dig into a little bit where, you talk about, we have direct access through Medicare. I know there are a lot of people out there not practicing that way, but as long as, let's reiterate it, or let me kind of comment, but also ask your interpretation on, I mean, so if someone comes into your clinic who has Medicare as their insurer, you can see them. You just need to make sure that they have a primary care physician that you can send the plan of care off to and get it signed. And I think a lot of workplaces put a lot more burden on themselves than they have to in that process.
Yep. Yeah. And there's opportunities too, because, there are patients out there. I think there are some patients out there who just have always done it through referral, and that's the way they like to, go through. But, you have patients like my mom who had some shoulder issues. And she was like, I'm going to see my PT tomorrow. And she's like, I'm not waiting for my physician. I'm going to go see my PT. And, so she did that because I told her, I was like, you can do that. So, there are folks who are, and it takes stuff like that, because she was in so much pain. She was like, I can't wait for an appointment with my primary care. And I was like, well, go to your PT tomorrow. And so it's situations like that I think patients then discover, yeah, this is a lot more time efficient and a way to get things done.
And now through this recent legislation, when a person is referred by a physician, the PT's only responsibility at that point is just to send a plan of care over to the physician.
Just submit the plan of care, and then you're done. Just email,
and you don't
fax,
have to get that signature anymore.
No more signatures.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's a huge change. Yeah. That's a huge win.
Yeah. And we still have a number of bills that we are pursuing. Obviously, locum tenens, the ability of folks to come in and temporarily take the place of PTs. That was another win we got back in 2016. We were able to get locum tenens for physical therapists. And this is something that physicians have. And we said, well, if physicians can have this, PT should have this as well. And we were able to get some of it. In 2016, the legislation allows locum tenens, PTs can use it, but it's limited to rural and underserved areas and not nationwide. We have legislation this year that, again, I think probably won't get passed in the next 10 days as Congress comes down, but is very nicely set up, and that would expand locum tenens nationwide. We saw introduction this year of the SAFE Act, which deals with adding PTs to the Welcome to Medicare and the Medicare Annual Wellness Visit as it relates to falls prevention. We're working on Medicare opt-out. Again, something physicians can do. They can opt out and take cash payment. We're like, PTs deserve it as well. And so we do have legislation. Actually, we were hoping it'd be introduced right after the November break that would specifically add PTs as authorized providers of opt-out. So there's a lot of issues that we're dealing. Of course, things related to admin prior authorization. We have a prior. We'll talk about a little bit later about the year-end package that's coming together. But a bill, APTA supported bill that is aimed specifically at addressing the use of prior authorization under Medicare Advantage plans. And so a lot of areas. But of course, the big one is just payment under the Medicare fee schedule, which is something that is not unique to PT. And I think that's something that needs to be said. PT is not the only provider hurting under Medicare Part B. Everyone is suffering, and it is kind of just highlights how broken the Medicare fee schedule is. We if I had my druthers, would blow up the fee schedule and start from scratch because it's not working for anybody. And the fact that dozens of providers, PT, OT, radiologists, orthopedic surgeons, pathologists, SLPs, primary care physicians, we've all had these cuts over the last 4 years, and it's because of what's known as this thing called budget neutrality. And then add on to that the fact that we don't the fee schedule is the only payment system that doesn't have an annual inflationary payment update. Cost of doing business, last time I checked, goes up every year. In the last few years, it's gone up by a lot. So inflation keeps going up, and payment is just going down. So that's where we've kind of hit this perfect storm as it relates to Medicare payment. Which also on the flip side, never before have we seen momentum like we do this year going into the new Congress, where reforming Medicare fee schedule is going to be a huge priority. I think we will see something in the next session of Congress, the 119th Congress that starts in January and goes through the end of 2026. This has got the Congress is finally recognizing and waking up that they've got to address the foundational issues with the Medicare fee schedule, because there are so many issues with it that again has caused this horrible environment. I mean, and this I think is probably the worst payment healthcare has been in 20, 30 years. And it's hurting for PTs are hurting. A lot of folks are hurting, and it's not working for anybody. This is not how you do healthcare, as I always like to say.
I want to emphasize just a couple things you said. You were talking about PTs opting out of Medicare and that legislation. Yep. I'm so glad you brought it up because I was going to try to figure out a way to bring it up because that's my little pet project. I would love to see that happen.
Yep.
Feel free to fire me up if you need any extra hands on deck for that one.
Well, I will connect you. Yeah, because it's a great bill, and it's something that we've been working on for a long time and working with APTA private practice on. Really and we've got our bill sponsors lined up, and it's just been one of those things of trying to get it in the hopper to get introduced. So that's going to be a huge issue in the new Congress. Opt-out is going to, and I think with the change politically in Congress, it sets it up nicely for opt-out, because opt-out, believe it or not, is actually a little controversial. There are some folks politically that don't like the concept of being able to opt out of Medicare, because there's a concern that if too many people opt out, you're not going to have a big enough network to care for Medicare providers. But that's an unfounded fear, because, and this goes back to 1997 when opt-out first became a reality, just, for at least physicians. There was a huge opposition to it because of this fear that too many physicians would opt out and Medicare would collapse. What they have found is about, on average, I want to say it's like 5% of physicians opt out. And that has not hurt Medicare, the network for Medicare at all. And so, we've done some numbers about, the estimate for how many PTs would do it. And again, that fear of there not being enough PTs is unfounded. So I think, and it's also, here's the big thing, APTA also had it what's known as scored. What would this save money or cost Medicare money? And by allowing PTs as well as OTs and SLPs to opt out of Medicare, you would save Medicare over $140 million. And so there's real cost savings there. So that was also some good news we got in terms of our proposed opt-out legislation.
Great. I'm glad we got some time on opt-out. I know I could take you down.
I could talk about
hours long tendrils on all these topics.
Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to emphasize that you mentioned is that with the Medicare fee schedule, I mean, there are dozens of professions who are all in the same bucket with us.
Yep.
It is not just, it's 30 something professions.
Yep.
And then I did, you've teased this a couple times of what's going on right now and what
Yep.
needs to happen in really in the next few days.
Yes.
Let's go there.
So what's today is what Wednesday, December 11th, and Congress, where the clock is ticking. So as we are recording this, up on Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats are negotiating on a year-end package. They need to do this quickly because on Friday, December 20th, the federal government runs out of money, and if they don't come to a deal, there will be a government shutdown, and which nobody wants. And so what they're doing is they're trying to figure out how to fund the government, but they're also trying to determine will they also do some additional what they call a year-end legislative package to ride along with that government funding. And so for us, the good news is it looks like they are going to try to do a legislative package to address. I mean, there's dozens of things they need to fix before they leave town for the year because this is the final days of the 118th Congress, and they won't be back till January, and that's the new Congress. So they got to do this. What we are looking at right now, there are three big issues. First and foremost is the Medicare fee schedule. And so APTA, and we've been very working closely with the AMA and physician groups and other provider groups. Right now, the push is to obviously get rid of the cut. Right now, it's about 2.8% is the cut to the conversion factor. For PT, that would equal out a little bit less for us, about 2.6. It depends also on what your billing patterns are and what your patient population is, but on average, about 2.6. Other providers are probably going to get hurt more than that. So we want to get rid of the cut, but we also want to get an inflationary payment update for 2025. And then what we put on the table is a 1.9% MEI adjustment, which is about 50% of what 2025 MEI, Medicare Economic Index, which is the index used to rate inflation. So we would love to see that zero cut plus a 1.9% boost. Right now, I don't think, I say this on Wednesday, the 11th, this could change by tomorrow. We're not hearing too much in terms of the 1.9% boost. We're definitely hearing they are seriously considering eliminating the cut. Part of that's just because of costs. It's going to cost, just getting rid of the cut is going to be about $3.4 billion in money that in new funding, they have to put into the fee schedule. That has to come from somewhere. So they're trying to figure out where they get that money. Adding that additional 1.9%, that's going to be $5 billion. So they're trying to figure out how they do it's all about doing the math and finding the money. So I think that's number one is fee schedule, trying to address at least for 2025. That's just short term. That's not the long term because they're going to, even if they fix the fee schedule for 2025, fee schedule still isn't fixed. And so that means when we come back in January, right out of the gate, it's going to be like, okay, we appreciate what you did for 2025. What are we going to do for the long-term fix? What are the big reforms? Again, we need a permanent MEI adjustment. We need to address this issue called budget neutrality, which is just killing everybody. And so what are the longer term reforms? So that's number one. Number two is telehealth. Obviously during the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, PTs were not allowed to use telehealth under Medicare. And the pandemic, there was a waiver that temporarily allowed PTs to use telehealth, which has been extended ever since the end of the national emergency. I like to say telehealth under Medicare was the largest unplanned pilot demonstration project in the history of healthcare, because we went from one day not being able to use telehealth to the next day being able to use telehealth. And I think and for some folks it's a great option. For some people it works. For some practices it's a good way to utilize as part of how they deliver services, not to replace but to supplement, to augment and to assist. Now, unfortunately, those telehealth flexibilities end on December 31st. So again, if Congress doesn't extend those, then we would have to stop using telehealth on January 1st, 2025. The good news that is on the table as part of this package. The good news is that we hear they're looking at maybe doing a 2-year extension through the end of 2026. And that way they could give them a little bit more time to come up with a permanent policy. So the second issue is extending those telehealth flexibilities. And then the third, and I alluded to this before, is this a prior authorization bill being led by Congressman Larry Bucshon, who's a physician from Indiana. He's actually retiring, so this is his last chance to get the bill through. But it's a bill aimed at really reining in and addressing and providing more transparency on the use of prior authorization under Medicare Advantage plans, which we know the use of prior auth has been exploding under MA plans, and a lot of MA plans have not been transparent, and they've abused prior auth, and they've used it as a way to actually impede access. And so this would be a great first step towards trying to rein in that prior auth use of prior auth by MA plans. And so that's now on the table also for potential inclusion. So we have the possibility of three nice wins. Prior auth, telehealth, stopping the cut. We'd like to see a boost, and that's so never say never. That's still going to be part of the negotiations, because the negotiations are continuing to this very day right now. So those are the big three things that we are watching, and hope maybe by the time listeners see this, it'll all be resolved. But either way, it has to be resolved by Friday the 20th, or the government shuts down.
Yeah. So I'll pull back the curtain a little bit here. And so today's the 11th.
Yep.
At best, we're going to have this episode out on Friday, the 13th.
Oh,
and that gives, it gives a week to work. So by the
Yeah.
time someone's hearing this episode, it might be Monday or Tuesday. But really to get this legislation through, the best thing we can be doing is letting our Congress people hear about it.
Yeah.
And how do we go about doing that?
Well, first and foremost, if you are subscribed to the APTA Advocacy Network, and hopefully folks are, you should have been receiving action alerts. I think we just had one go out today. We had one go out last week that it's easy to use. You get an email, it has a link, you click on it, and it takes you to the Legislative Action Center. You put in your zip code, it looks up who your member of Congress is, signs your name to it. It's already pre-written. So literally 3 clicks of a button, and you've sent an email to your member of Congress. And our message is, for the year-end package, include payment increase for Medicare fee schedule, fix the fee schedule, provide that payment boost, extend the telehealth flexibilities, and include the prior authorization fix for MA plans. And so those are the 3 things that we've been pushing up on Capitol Hill. And I tell you, by Monday, if folks are watching this and Congress still has not come to a deal, then we definitely need to put the pressure on, because then the clock is ticking. Again, the Friday the 20th is when they have to come to a deal. And so you can go to the apta.org, click on advocacy. If you're signed up to the network, you're going to continue to get advocacy alerts. If you can also download the APTA, this advocacy app on your phone, your Android or Apple. That's an app that there you go. You can just go on your phone, download the app, and you can do this. You can send these emails through your phone. Again, it takes less than 30 seconds to do. And it's important because, that is that voice that members of Congress need to hear from their constituents and have that pressure going on. I was just looking at an interesting stat. APTA members sent over 50,000 emails to members of Congress this year. That is a huge number, a very impressive number for our members. And so really appreciate all the work our members have done, and really just letting their voice be heard, and be heard loud, because that's what Congress needs. They need to hear our loud voices.
Yeah. And at the end of this episode, if I can figure out the technology, I'm going to try to share my screen and just go through that Legislative Action Center, just to show you how quick it is, because it really is a 30-second deal to just pump out an email to all your representatives and senators. What else, Justin? I mean, it's basically like when these big action alerts come out, that's an alert to the member of, like, this is an important deal that you should be writing Congress on. What are the other pieces to this that we need to stitch together, and then we'll work towards a close here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to stay informed and up to date as to what all the work that is going, that APTA is doing, that our state chapters are doing, because there's a lot going on, and there's also a lot of noise. So a lot of folks may not hear about the work that we're doing. They may say, well, what is APTA doing on payment? What is APTA doing on admin burden? So if you subscribe to the APTA Advocacy Network, first thing you're going to do is you're going to be getting the APTA Advocacy newsletter, which we're actually about to be going to press with our next edition next week. And that's a great way to keep up to date with what we're doing both on Capitol Hill, at the state level, as well as what we're doing with commercial payers. We have a commercial payment team here at APTA. All they do is work on Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, United Healthcare. They just had a call today with United Healthcare on their prior authorization policy. And so it's a great way to keep up to date on all the things that we're doing, payment-wise, admin burden-wise, scope of practice, et cetera. So stay informed and be involved. Second is, I would also encourage folks, again, we talked about previously, get involved with your chapter, with your state legislative committee, or your state chapter's payment committee. We have opportunities to get involved through APTA's Key Contact program, building that relationship with your member of Congress. So that's always the first thing, is just be informed and be aware of what's going on, because there's a lot going on and there's just so much noise right now. I get 10,000 emails a day. I'm sure you do as well. It's like, how do you identify what's important to read? So making sure that you're getting the information at least, and keeping up to date, and then and you can be engaged at the level that you want. If all you want to do is send an email, that's great, perfect. If you want to maybe do a little bit more, do a little bit of maybe tweeting at your member of Congress. We also have sample tweets through our grassroots platform that you can send tweets to aimed at your member of Congress. You can participate, again, as a federal affairs liaison for your chapter. But of course, I think the funnest way to do is also attend APTA's PT Day on Capitol Hill. This is an annual event where we send we have PTs, PTA students from across the country come here to DC. We do about a day and a half of training and getting that information about how to talk to your member of Congress and what issues to talk about. And this year we had it. This past spring we had over 300 members from across the country. We had meetings with every member of Congress, talking about payment, talking about prior auth, and also highlighting the report that APTA, the landmark report that APTA released last year, the economic value of physical therapy report. So that was a big issue. And I know I would say that, looking ahead to 2025, our APTA's PT Day on Capitol Hill is going to be on Tuesday, July 15th here in Washington, D.C. It'll be on the tail end of the last day of the APTA Leadership Congress after the APTA House of Delegates. So if you're coming to D.C. for the House of Delegates or any of the other events tied to Leadership Congress, stay an extra day. Or if you want to come to D.C. and just participate in APTA's PT Day, please come and join us. We'll have information coming out just right after the new year on how to register and participate in this year's program.
There is so much that you do. Those of us who are paying attention know that there is so much work that APTA is doing all the time. All the stuff we talked about today is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think a lot of us who are paying attention also know what a special team we have at APTA and the great work that APTA is doing for the profession out there. So thank you and keep it up. And one more urge to everybody who's listening to take action on these topics. Really easy in the Legislative Action Center. And after Justin and I close here, I'm gonna try to get you a little tutorial video on how you make that quick action to send an email to your congressional representatives. Thank you again, Justin. It's been great. Thanks for taking time away for this.
And absolutely, if I could make one last plug, also be sure to
Absolutely.
check out the work that our PT PAC does, ptpac.org. That's our political action committee. Find out ways if that may be something you want to get involved in to learn more about. So that's a great way to provide support to our members of Congress who are supporting us. So James, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really love talking about these things. And I also have to say, thanks to those folks who are watching and the APTA members. Membership matters. We can't do what we do without our members. And that's why membership is so valuable and membership is so important to APTA. We need now more than ever a time when we're facing one of our toughest environments and we have some big challenges we need to face. The only way we're going to do it is do it together, and that's through membership at APTA. So thank you all who are watching who are members of APTA. We can't do it what we do without you.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much. We could talk forever. I mean, there were another like 3 topics in the last 5 minutes that we could go down like half-hour paths on.
I'll come back in 2025 after the new Congress comes to town and we can talk all about what's going on in the new Congress.
Yeah, we'll have to do this in the future. All right. Thanks so much, Justin.
All right. Thanks, James.
All right. This is James Spencer. I am back with Justin Elliott, and we just wanted to show you quickly how easy it is to write to your congresspeople on the American Physical Therapy Association website. Here I am on apta.org. I'm going to drop down to the Advocacy tab here and take action. I'm going to scroll down, and I want to go into the Legislative Action Center. Correct, Justin?
That's it.
And if you have patients that you want to take action on topics, because the politicians love hearing from their constituents, you have this patient action center too, so you can always be pointing patients or family members in that direction.
Yeah, Jamie, it's a good point. Patient access is open access to anyone. Leg Action Center is for members, and then you'll see the Regulatory Action Center. That's for when we have proposed rules from CMS. So 3 different systems for different issues.
And then I know that ask Congress to pass critical legislation before the end of year. I'm going to add my voice. This is going to pop up. Oh, it popped up in a new tab. And here I'm gonna take this opportunity to scroll past all my personal info before I click to this tab. There we go. And there's a little send email button. And Justin, what I always tend to do is throw in a little personal blurb on here. Do you think is that a good thing, or do they just like receiving the form letters?
No, you have the opportunity to add a couple sentences or personalize it, which we always say is good. And when we talk about personalizing, it's say hey, I'm a private practitioner in what your hometown is, and a little bit about your practice, or something that kind of tells them a little bit more about who you are, what your practice setting is, who are some of the patient, what type of patients you serve. And so if you have the time, it's always good to add just a couple sentences, personalize it about who you are so that they get to know who you are. But if you don't have time, you could just click send and it's ready to go.
And normally I do like get into what my practice setting is and how these topics affect my practice in particular and my patients. But for this purpose, since we're doing it on camera here, I'm just going to do real quick that I am a doctor of physical therapy and a private practice owner in Aspen. These topics are incredibly important to me and to my ability to continue to serve my patients. And I see I have a typo there. Please reach out. And then send email. And I believe it's going to ask me for a zip code. I used to have it linked to my Twitter account. I haven't been on that in a while.
If you're logged in to you have to log into your APTA using your member ID. And here's the thing: once you log into the APTA website, it automatically pulls up your address based on your APTA membership record. So it'll pull it up who your member of Congress is based on the zip code that we have in our database. So you don't even have to enter in your zip code or address. Log into APTA when you go onto the site, automatically pulls it all up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. Emails are sent to my 2 senators and my congressional representative on that topic, and that was me taking an extra minute to type out my own thing, which you don't have to do. So very quick. It's a great way to take action. It's one of the more effective things we can do. Please go find that and do it. Right. Anything else, Justin?
That's it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging with us in this extracurricular activity here. Take care.